Now today we're going to do two sutras. So both sutras start with the word Salla, S-A-L-L-A, Salla. So this first sutta is called Sallatthena Sutta. And the second sutta is simply called Salla Sutta. Salla usually translates the dart. It also means arrow. There are many famous parables, similes the Buddha used of the man shot with a dart or shot with a poison arrow. So this here Sallatthena refers to this dart that is gone out, that is gone away, no more dart. Something like pull out, if you like. Atta means gone. Of course, there are different versions of this title. Some version is Sallattha, A-T-T-A, Atta, meaning self. But the usual spelling is this, Sallatthena, with a dart drawn out. Samyutta 36.6, chapter 36, sutta number 6. Samyutta means connected teachings. WT refers to World Tripitaka. Once this was available online, very nice, very beautiful website from Thailand. But for some reason it has closed down. But I think the files are still available if you look around on the internet. And BE means Burmese edition. So the Siamese and the Burmese edition, they use a short title, Salla Sutta. So notice the Salla Sutta, Discourse on the Dart, is very similar to the other one in the Sanyutta Sutta Nipata 3.8, also called Salla Sutta. So in order to keep them unique for easy identification, I use this Sall'atthena Sutta. Sometimes I just use a short, simple name, like, for example, Sutta Nipata Salla Sutta, or we can put brackets in front, Sutta Nipata Salla Sutta, to know that we are talking about this very ancient sutta from the Sutta Nipata. I often like to use the name Sutta Nipata itself because the Sutta Nipata contains some of the earliest suttas taught by the Buddha. Right, so this Sallatthena Sutta is short and interesting and important. It tells us about the nature of pain, two kinds of pain, two kinds of suffering, how not to get caught up with suffering. I think many of you have heard the English saying, someone having fallen and then hit by the ladder, something like that, yeah? So in other words, you have two kinds of pain, suffering twice. So this is the Sutta talks about this. How does this happen? And what is the psychological and spiritual significance of this? Now, before that, let's look a bit more about this Salla, this dart. The most famous parable is found in the Chula Malunkhya Buddha Sutta. You know, these are in your notes. In the Chula Malunkhya Buddha Sutta, if you remember, the Buddha was answering a question from Malunkhya Buddha, who wants to know the answers to 10 questions. It's basically the Buddha is saying, don't get too speculative. Don't be so interested in the philosophical, speculative aspect until we get lost in thoughts. And then you can't meditate. It's not very helpful. The Buddha is silent on the 10 questions, like the origin of the world and what happens to someone after death and so on. Because these things don't help us to be really happy. In fact, it makes us even more confused and upset, especially when we find people don't follow our ideas and opinions. It definitely doesn't help us to go nearer the path. So the Buddha doesn't want to deal with this kind of questions. The Buddha remains silent, and he gives a famous parable of the man shot with an arrow. He said, there is this man who's shot with a poison arrow. It's not an ordinary arrow, it's a poison arrow. And relatives call a dart remover, Salakata. This is a dart removal specialist. Okay, so he comes along. He at once will look at the dart and work to remove it, and then counteract the poison, and then heal this man. No questions asked, because he knows that's the dart. That's good enough. So the Buddha says, if anyone is foolish enough to say, if this man himself who got hurt is foolish enough to say, oh, I'm not going to get this dart pulled out until you tell me, who is this man who shot me? Which clan is he from? Where is he from? Or what kind of bow was it? What kind of weapon was it? And all the details, Sutta will give you all the kinds of materials from which a bow is made. The Buddha knew all this. Or what kind of string was used? What kind of arrowhead was used? And the Buddha says, before any of this question can be answered, this man who is hurt will die. So the meaning of this parable is there are some questions which are not important. It cannot be answered, like who created the world? You've got so many religions, and every religion got their own answer. How come there is no single answer? If it's true that there must be one single answer, but everybody is having their own opinion, and sometimes within the same religion, worshiping the same God, they have different ideas about that God and a story of creation and so on. In other words, these are just stories, and people, there's no answer to this. There are certain things which is not helpful at all. Even if we know how the world started, or how the world will end for that matter, which can be useful for the scientists, but for your practice, for your calmness of mind, is not very helpful. What is helpful is to understand the Four Noble Truths, why there is suffering. First of all, that there is suffering. What is the suffering? That there is the condition for arising of suffering, and therefore it can also be ended. How do we end this? And work to end it. That's what we're supposed to do. And we're doing it just that. We're doing just that by gathering here together, by practicing, right? So that's why this gathering is very special. So that is about being pragmatic, keeping to the real goal of practicing the Buddha's teaching. As we go along, I'll give you more details of the teaching. Let's look at the teaching now. Let's go down to the Sutta translation itself. Right, Sall'atthena Sutta, the discourse with the dot drawn out, S36.6. Now, the Sutta starts with number 3. 1 and 2 is already found in the earlier part of the Sutta. It has the introduction. Thus, ever heard at one time the Buddha was dwelling in the Savatthi. Yeah? So now you find straight away the Sutta records the Buddha addressing the monks. Bhikshus, the untutored ordinary person feels a pleasant feeling. And you have the Pali word, Sukampi Vedana Vedayati. Okay? Sukampi, you all can guess the meaning. Sukam means pleasant, good, joyful. P is just a stress word. Okay? Sometimes you can translate as to, T-O-O. Vedanang is feeling, and then Vedayati is to feel. So this is typical Pali. You have feel the feeling, right? This is how the Pali idiom we say. So this untutored ordinary person feels a pleasant feeling, feels a painful feeling, dukampi vedanang vedayati, feels a neutral feeling, right? Now, neutral feeling is quite a long word in Pali. Notice adukam. Adukam means not suffering, and then asukam, not pleasant. In English, we say neither painful nor pleasant feeling. So some people to translate it very long, in a long way, neither painful nor pleasant feeling. But it's easier, we just use the word neutral in English. Yeah. So here, the untutored ordinary person, like us, we're not enlightened, we're not yet reached the path, so we are called ordinary person. Now, since we are studying the sutta, so here the commentators have used the word kalyana. Kalyana means good, a good worldling. So we are a little different from, say, some other people who are not interested in Buddhism at all. So we are called kalyana utujana, the good worldling, the good ordinary person. So we also feel just these three kinds of feelings: pleasant, painful, neutral. Right? So the Buddha said, this is the situation. Then, section 4, but bhikshus, the wise noble disciple too feels pleasant feeling, painful feeling, neutral feeling, right? Who are these wise noble disciples? The stream winners, once returners, non-returners, and arhats, including the Buddha. They also feel these three kinds of feelings, the same. So now the Buddha asked the question. 5. What then, bhikshus, is the distinction, the disparity, the difference between the wise noble disciple and the untutored ordinary person, right? So what's the difference? Both have the same kind of feelings. These monks, they are new. The arhats are not present in this case, probably. Or maybe it's the monks who are not yet stream winners themselves, so they were the ones talking. So they reply, they say, Bhante, our teachings are rooted in the Blessed One, guided by the Blessed One, have the Blessed One as refuge. It would be good indeed, Bhante, if the Blessed One were to explain its meaning. Having heard the Blessed One, the bhikshus would remember it. All right? So this is a very common response where the monks, they want to know what the Buddha has to tell them. They don't want to be, they do not want to show off and say, oh, we know that, and then lecture to the Buddha. So here we see this humility, this willingness to learn, right? But in a sense, it's harder today to learn the Dhamma than in the Buddha's time, because today we have so many ways of learning Buddhism. In Buddha's time, there are no books. So you want to learn, you must go to a teacher. And not to just a teacher, but to a Buddhist teacher, to someone who is an arhat, if possible. Nowadays, you have lots of books online. You don't have to even go out of your house. You can, there's so many books, so many good translations. And I have a lot of people asking me questions, writing to me. And now it's so easy because of the internet, right? And I try my best to help them. But sometimes I feel as if I'm like an answering machine, because they just ask questions and there's no end to it. And I ask myself, where are we getting here? I mean, these people, are they really learning, or are they just curious? They could well get replies from the chat GPT, Now, let me just talk a bit about learning Buddhism from chat GPT. Let me say, you're going to be very confused if you learn Buddhism from chat GPT, all right? I have tested it for a while, especially when I need something, like where in the sutta is this mentioned. It's a good machine. It uses machine language. It will give you a long, impressive list, very nice, nicely worded answer. Oh, this sentence is spoken here in this sutta, and here's the list of suttas, and these are the people who said it, You say, wow. You look at it, you say, this is wonderful. I have all these teachings here. I don't need anyone now. But if you take care to investigate, you go to those places where this ChatGPT tells you the name of the sutta, the volume and the page, you find there's nothing there. There was once I asked one of those questions in there is a Pali verse, and I asked, there were 4 or 5 quotations given by this ChatGPT. I wonder where it gets it from. Usually it gets from online, whatever is online. And none of this was correct. And that really troubled me. So if you want to use ChatGPT, make sure you already know the Dhamma very well. You know how to investigate, you know how to locate the teaching. Otherwise, you'll be even more lost. You'll be a follower of you have a webby mind, if you like, if you follow this ChatGPT, or Chatty mind, if you like. So my point here is that if you have a teacher you can ask questions, you should be very humble, very, very eager, very curious. Just like these monks here, they don't want to be to show off their cleverness. They feel, here's the Buddha teaching us. We want to know what the Buddha has to teach us. So follow the way of reading. If you're really serious about someone want to teach you, then you ask this person, what can I read? Okay, and then read systematically, ask questions, discuss. Otherwise, you find you'll be wasting your teacher's time and your own time also. And you must also remember, the teacher also teaches many other people. If I'm free, I have a lot of time, like some of these people, they have a lot of time, so they're called leisure Buddhists, they read all kinds of things, and they get confused all kinds of modern ideas. Then you find you are getting nowhere, right? Whereas if you focus on a particular sutta, a particular theme, and then you follow the instructions of your teacher, then you find you will learn step by step. Over many years, your understanding will grow. Otherwise, you keep jumping about and not being disciplined in your study. You find you're studying so many speculative things, that the things that the Buddha didn't want to answer in the Chula Malungkya Buddha Sutta, and you find you have wasted your whole life. Right? So in a sense, I'm lucky. Over the last 50 years, I've managed to follow a certain pattern of training and learning because of what I was taught in Thailand and elsewhere. And I'm also lucky to get a few really good people as friends. I've never met them. Many of these I've not met them personally, but they are really very good professional proofreaders and scholars. And they are very honest with me. They tell me the mistakes in my writings and how I can improve all these things. And all this helps a lot. So you have this humility to learn and a drive, enthusiasm to learn. And this is how we become wise. That's how the Westerners become great scientists and engineers and so on. They have this drive, right? So we have to learn that. We have to be more driven, so to speak, more focused and determined to know things, good things. This, like this monks who tell the Buddha, "You're our teacher. Please tell us the answer." Right? So the Buddha said, "Then listen, bhikshus. Pay close attention. I will speak." Right? So, in other words, the Buddha said, "Get ready then. The teaching is going to come." And then further down, go down a bit. And the answer, "Yes, Bhante." The bhikshus reply in essence to the Blessed One. The Blessed One said this. Okay, now the teaching begins. The Buddha explains the statement that the Buddha made. So here you find the teaching is very clear. The structure is very clear. The Buddha makes a statement, the thesis, and then he answers them. The thesis is made in section 3 to 5. Then section 7, section 7 onwards, the Buddha answers the question that he has himself asked. So there are 2 parts. No? So I've given you the heading, the headers there to help you see. This first part is the unawakened are hurt by two painful darts. Bhikshus, when the untutored ordinary person is being touched by a painful feeling, he sorrows, grieves, laments, beats his breast, becomes confused. Hence, he feels two feelings, the bodily and the mental. Okay, so this is the first part, not finished yet. So the Buddha starts with something to interest us. The Buddha says, the ordinary person, people like us who are not awakened, we suffer two feelings. And I think all of us are familiar with this. Let's say we are careless and then we fall down, and then we start cursing the floor, right? Or we start blaming people. And so we have fallen, we feel the pain, that's bodily pain, but then the mind was very angry, all right? So that's where we have two feelings. We suffer twice. So you can already guess, basically, how do we only have one feeling, not have the second feeling? This is what this teaching is about. Okay, let's not jump into conclusion. Let's find out what is the Buddha going to tell us, and then we'll be quite surprised. Because here the Buddha is going to teach us how to suffer just once only, not twice. The body, remember, there is a connection. There are other suttas. That's what I like to do when I study suttas. I try to connect with other suttas. Even in this section 7, if you think carefully, there's another sutta very closely connected with this. A very old man came to see the Buddha, if you remember. Right? Nakulapita, yes. So he comes to see the Buddha and says, Sibante, I'm very old. Please teach me something very simple so I can practice. And the Buddha tells him, okay, Nakulapita, just remember, my body may be sick, but let my mind not be sick. So that's another way of looking at this, this teaching. The body may be sick, but let not the mind be sick. When Nakulapita heard this, he was very happy. He said, wow, yeah, that's true. He was so happy and he was indeed pleased, smiling. And then Sariputta comes along. Sariputta is wisdom. Now, if you like, the Buddha represents compassion here. So he's very happy because the Buddha was compassionate to him. Then wisdom comes along, Sariputta comes along and asks him, oh, you look very happy, Nakulapita. Why are you so happy? You must have heard the Dhamma, beautiful Dhamma, right? Say, yes, indeed. The Buddha taught me something beautiful. The Buddha said, although my body is sick, let not my mind be sick. And then Buddha says, oh, wonderful. But did you ask the Buddha what it means? Then Nakulapita realized, oops, I didn't ask what it means. I thought I knew. I'm so happy. I thought I knew. And then he says, oh, he asked Sariputta, can you please teach me? All right. So it's just nice, all right? He asked Sariputta. But Sariputta's answer is slightly different for this. Sariputta goes on to talk about the four satipatthanas, the four focuses of mindfulness, right? So there are different ways of dealing with this question, right? So here, I like this particular answer because you find a very deep psychology here, as you will notice in a while, all right? Okay, so now the Buddha starts with something very simple. Now it goes deeper. Verse 8, Bhikshus, it is just as if they were to wound a person with a dart or arrow, if you like, and then they were to wound him with a second dart, so get shot with two arrows. As such, Bhikshus, that person would feel the sensation of two darts. Even so, Bhikshus, when the untutored ordinary person is touched by a painful feeling, he sorrows, grieves, laments, beats his breast, becomes confused. So he feels two feelings, the bodily and the mental. On being touched by that painful feeling, he shows aversion towards. Okay, this is the key line you must want. The first key line you must remember. So this person has fallen down and gets angry. So what do? We have fallen down. Well, I like to say, if we do fall down mindfully. Of course, you might say that's silly, isn't it? Well, how can you fall down mindfully? If you're mindful, you won't fall down, right? But what I mean is, if you are mindful, even if we are mindful, sometimes we still fall. There is a story of a meditating monk who actually fell. He was living on his own in this forest retreat. He will get up every morning and then go down from his kuti and then wash himself and then prepare himself. He walks to the walkway, for the walking meditation, and that's his daily routine. A very mindful monk. But one day he fell. For some reason, he fell. It could be many reasons. Maybe there's a piece of stone there. You can't see the stone; it's under the foot. Or maybe the steps, wood is old and rotten. So anything can happen. So don't blame the wood, don't blame the stone. So he fell down, and I don't remember the exact words that he said in the sutta. Maybe he didn't say anything, but the sutta just said that he realized he said something like, oops, I'm not very mindful here. No? So let me become more mindful and practice to be more mindful. That's a wonderful attitude. He doesn't blame anyone, doesn't blame anything, right? Then we have another sutta related to this, where the Buddha says, if you have done all the things that can be done, and then things still don't work out the way you want it, so what do? Just ask yourself, what do I do next? Simple question. What do I do next? So this idea, what do I do next, is very simple, very quick in the case of this meditating monk. He didn't get angry. He didn't get upset. The best thing, he didn't say, oh, I give up as a monk, I'm a failure, right? So he says, wow, I'm not mindful. So let me be more mindful. And he was even more determined to meditate. That's the way it should be. Okay. Now there's a few more minutes here before our break. So I might as well just edit a few more personal thoughts that are connected with this teaching. All right. Every time before this Friday class, a few days before the Friday class, in fact, a week before the Friday class, the Friday before this Friday class, right now will remind me, okay, get the sutta done, all right? So that she can check it and then update it. There always will be typos, when we, just the human errors. So we will update it properly and so on. The thing is, every time I read the suttas, I will keep on adding notes. That is why you find very often I will update the notes, because I keep adding notes to it. More information as I discover here and there, cross references. So I say, I want to share this with others so that you find the sutta translation that you read more useful, more interesting. So one of the most difficult things for us, meaning for me and Ratna, is to check the Pali. It's very difficult for one person to read the Pali and then translate. Well, the translation part is easy, but making sure you follow the flow of the Pali, and then there are lots of repetitive passages. And the worst part is some of these Pali editions, they put etc. 3 dots. You don't know what is missing. So luckily we have other versions. You got the Burmese version, you got the Singlish version, you got the Thai version. So of course you got the European version. And each of these have got other sub-versions, smaller editions, if you like. But usually these 4, if you have these 4, it's enough. You have the PTS edition from London, Pali Text Society. It's called the European edition. And you got the Burmese edition. And then Burmese edition, so you have a few manuscripts. And usually when we say Burmese edition, we refer to the Chatta Sangiti version. When you look at the CD version, it's actually the Chatta Sangiti, the 6th council version. And of course, you have the Singlish version. There are 2, 3 versions. And the Thai versions, you got 3 or 4 at least now, Thai versions. Of course, here, sadly, Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, he totally omits the Thai version. So there's a whole, one very important scripture, Pali canon, is missing from his translation. So hopefully some people will do a new translation complete with all this Pali Tipitaka complete for cross references. So anyway, so we have to check the Pali. So I used to smile and laugh at myself. I said, this is the blessing and purpose of our marriage, so that we can work together, sit together, and then she reads the Pali, and then I check the translation. And that helps a lot, okay, to make sure that we are doing this very carefully. And you all know very well, a close friend of mine, Clement Tan in Malaysia, he's very keen in Pali. He teaches himself Pali, he learns himself Pali. He learns Pali, and he has this very traditional mind that likes to chant, and he likes to check the Pali. So often he will check the sutta for me, and then I will carefully look at it again, make sure that I follow the original lines of the Pali text, and then I give it to you. We study it together. So that's how we all get together for this class with this notes. Now, it's not easy. I told myself, wow, I'm doing this alone. It was really tough, and I often make mistakes. And then some scholars, they say, oh, this Piya has no title, he's not a PhD character. So, and they just laugh and smile and say, oh, look at his mistakes, you know. So they're not very helpful. But there's some who are very helpful. They tell me what's wrong. My point is, there are people who can work together. So our local people who are really good, who know some Pali, who know some Dhamma, who knows a lot of sutras. Compared to 50 years ago, you find today, I have people like Ramantan and a few other people who know some Pali or who are good in English, and they work together with me to translate the sutras. So I'm telling myself, the ideal is if we get more local people to work together to translate this Pali text, we will get a much, much better translation. And the local people will be more involved in what really is Buddhist practice as intended by the Buddha. But now we are practicing foreign Buddhism from Sri Lanka, from Thailand, from Myanmar, and so on. And we are wasting our resources. We're all divided up in different groups. We were the only Buddhist group not united in the world, so to speak. Even in the West, the Buddhists are very united. So this is something to think about. We should get together, work together on something really useful, for example, the sutras. Okay, having said that, we just take a break now. Now, so in the sutta, the Buddha says that this person is hit by one dart and then he's hit by second dart. How is that? Because he gets very angry with his pain, all right? So first there is the body dart. Let's say he gets sick or he falls down, and then he gets angry. So there's body, there's mind. So you have two pains now. So this is a very simple psychology here, right? So that was 8.2. Just now I read 8.2, right? Have I read 8.2 to you yet?
No, not yet.
Okay, let me go to 8.2 then. Yeah? On being touched by that painful feeling, he shows aversion towards it. When he shows aversion towards that painful feeling, the latent tendency of aversion towards painful feeling lies latent in him. Okay, this is a very important passage here. This is something we need to reflect on, 8.2. So when you study sutta, you identify this kind of the key passages. Highlight a few, don't highlight everything, just the keywords. You notice I've already highlighted the word like aversion, latent tendency. So those are the keywords. No? And then if you see there's the italics, it means this word was already kind of, it's repeated or it follows after the keywords. So the sequence the hierarchy is, the most important is the bowl, and then comes this underlined one. And this shows that it is repeated already. That is already found here. So here the person falls, he feels pain or he suffers, or maybe he lost something, or maybe he failed an exam or lost a job, whatever, right? And he gets very angry, see? And so the Buddha says that's not very helpful, because when you show aversion, you show anger, you show hatred, then this latent tendency lies latent. Now this is Pali, you know. So we're talking about latent tendency. What is this latent tendency? Let me spend a few minutes here. Now, your conscious mind is present here, listening to me. Behind your conscious mind, there is what's called the pre-conscious. That's the mind that thinks before you act. That's the mind chatting with you, say, oh, I like this, interesting. Oh, this one is boring, you know. So when you say this one is boring, that will invoke the latent tendency, okay, of dislike, aversion. And it becomes boring because you already said it, you see. That is the difference when you look at students. I've lectured to a big class of students. I look at all the different students, you know, some of them you can see their eyes are always looking ahead, open. They're very interested. And there are those you find their eyes are elsewhere, their mind is elsewhere. So you know they're not so focused. So one way to stay curious, interested, is number one, never to say, oh, this is boring, even though it's difficult listening. You can say, this is interesting, instead of saying boring, okay? Then you find somehow you will stay on, you will listen, and then it becomes clearer. It took me many years to understand the suttas by being patient. So be patient with yourself. Don't say it's boring. Then you find you will grow wiser, you will learn more, you have better understanding. You will prevent the latent tendency of aversion to lie latent in you. Lie latent, that means it's always there, hiding, lurking in the dark, ready to pull your string, ready to influence you. Don't do this. Don't do this good thing. Don't do that good thing. Then you are lost, you see. So that's latent tendency. It lies hidden, sleeping. So this latent tendency, they are more dark version, deeper version of greed, hatred, delusion. Greed, hatred, delusion lies just below your conscious mind, in the pre-conscious before you act. The greed, hatred, delusion will influence you. Or you can use the opposite, non-greed, non-hate, non-delusion, to do something good. And because you have been training yourself, you have a better chance of preventing the latent tendency of greed, hate, delusion, or lust, aversion, and ignorance from pulling you down, from holding you back, in other words. So the idea here is every time you have a lazy thought, say, oh, this is boring, latent tendency of aversion grows in you. Another way of putting it, every time you get angry, you are likely to get angry again. This is another way of putting it. So that is one way to train yourself. I'm going to be calm. I'm not going to get angry. Of course, people will get angry and they get violent, so it gets worse and worse, is it? Right? So we don't want to do that. We start early by nipping it in the bud, we say. So this is what the sutta is about, how to nip it in the bud. Then 8.3, what happens next? Okay, 8.3, on being touched by a painful feeling, he delights in sensual pleasure, right? So someone, when they feel they don't like something, right? Let's say they get angry with the wife, or a woman get angry with the husband. So they look for someone else who is friendly and nice to them, right? That's going to get more trouble, isn't it? So this is an example here. On being touched by a painful feeling, he delights in sensual pleasure. Why is that so? Because bhikshus, the untutored, ordinary person, knows no other escape than through sensual pleasures, right? So when someone is bored, what will he say? Say, oh, this is boring. Let's go and do something interesting, right? So this is what the passage says. So here the Buddha puts it in a very interesting teaching way, dhamma way. This person who is suffering pain, boredom, anger, or the negative emotion, he delights in sensual pleasure. Or he seeks sensual pleasure. But the sutta doesn't say seeks, not mentioned. The sutta just says abhinandati. He delights in sensual pleasure. He thinks about it, say, oh, how nice if I can do this, do that, because he doesn't know any other way. What the Buddha is teaching, how to deal with the mind, right? So he looks for sensual pleasures. He wants to enjoy life because he's so bored. 8.4. What happens when you do that? When he delights in sensual pleasure, the latent tendency of lust towards pleasant feeling lies latent in him. Right. So before this, he gets angry or upset. The anger, aversion, right, lies latent, becomes a habit. And another way of putting it is becomes a habit. Then when there is this aversion, this dislike, this hatred, the opposite quality, the other partner, if you like, the terrible twin, that's lust, lies in him, also present. So that is why you notice in the sets, in the suttas, for example, the what do you call that, the distractions, the fetters and the all those things that distract us from meditation, the hindrances, right? You have something to do with pleasure, attachment to pleasure first, and the second one is the opposite of it, hatred and ill will and so on. So here you have the opposite, right? So when he has hatred, sensual pleasure also follows. He wants to look to enjoy something else because he is bored. When he delights in sensual pleasure, the latent tendency of lust towards pleasant feeling lies latent in him. He does not understand according to reality the arising, the passing away, the gratification, the danger, and the escape with regards to feelings. This is because of feelings. Feelings is operating in him. Here, feelings means liking, disliking, is operating in him, taken over his mind. In other words, he lives in like a puppet kind of computerized conduct of on, off, on, off. On is liking, off is disliking. So there are only two points here, liking, disliking. So he's caught in this dichotomy, in this pair of behavior, liking, disliking. When he doesn't like something, he will like something else, which is just as bad or worse, right? When he likes something, there's something he doesn't like, which is could be worse, right? So this is the meaning here. All right. So think about this. Read this again and reflect on it. All right. What happened next? 8.6. Not understanding according to reality, the arising, the seizing, the gratification, the danger, and the escape regarding feelings, the latent tendency of ignorance towards neutral feeling lies latent in him. Now, I like this part because you rarely see this as a set. The three roots are mentioned here as a set. This is the oldest set of defilements, oldest set of the latent tendencies. There are these three. Okay? lust, aversion, ignorance, which are the deeper roots of greed, hate, delusion, the three unwholesome roots. These are the three latent tendencies deeper inside our unconscious. In a sense, it comes from our past lives, all the past habits, they come back. So here, this person, he doesn't understand the nature of feelings. So here the sutta says, the Buddha says, first of all, he doesn't understand how feeling arises. So because he doesn't know how feeling arises, he doesn't know how feeling ends. Gratification means how feeling make you feel you want this, you want that, but you don't really know the danger of it. And you do not know how to get out of it. You just keep on, like gambling is a very good example. People get caught up with gambling. They think they will get money. That's lust, right? They think they will win, see? So they do not know how to escape from it. They're caught with that false idea, that feeling, see? So they're ignorant about all these things, right? How does the ignorance arise? Because of neutral feeling. The meaning here is this. We like something, we don't like something because of how in the past we have experienced those things. For example, when you are meditating, you see this beautiful picture of a nice garden. You like it because you've been there and you like it. But then, of course, the opposite is you think of something sad, you're not happy. Okay, so you have like, dislike. But then you have not experienced this before, but this kind of the joyful feeling arises. Actually, I have people telling me this. They're beginners. They suddenly don't feel either happy or sad, but it's a different kind of joy. It's very peaceful. It's a very peaceful feeling when the feelings disappear, so to speak. They feel so calm. They don't feel the body. They don't feel like, they don't feel dislike. Actually, it's a pleasant feeling if they understand it, but they don't understand it. So because they do not understand the nature of neutral feeling, meaning the absence of like and dislike, the latent tendency of ignorance lies latent in that person. So look at the three roots again. If you are caught up with liking, with desire, with lust, you promote the latent tendency of lust. When you greed for something, you will greed again. And when you cannot get what you greed for, you get angry, you get upset. Then when you get upset again, right? So when you don't like something, the latent tendency of aversion arises in you. And when you have neither like nor dislike, you don't know what to make of it because you're not experienced it. It's neutral. You ignore it. You say, oh, you don't know what it is. When you ignore it, you are encouraging ignorance. That's how the latent tendency of ignorance arises. So what must you do then? The best way is to reflect on it as mind-made and impermanent. You know it will go away. It will change. You look at it and then you realize it's peaceful. So there you are. You have these three unwholesome roots. They go deep down further into the three latent tendencies. And they work with each other, making our life miserable. So what happens in this case, 8.7, if he feels a pleasant feeling, he feels it is yoke to him. If he feels a painful feeling, he feels that it is yoke to him. If he feels a neutral feeling, he feels that it is yoke to him. In other words, he feels stuck to it. He doesn't notice, actually, they just come and go, come and go. You see, the good thing about most of us here is because you can sit here peacefully because you don't think too much about the past, your painful failures and difficulties. You let them come, you let them go. You live in the present. The present is always new to you. That's the meaning of this 8.7. So now we come to the ending of this first part, 8.8, the Buddha says, this bhikshu is called an untutored ordinary person who is yoked to birth, death, sorrow, lamentation, physical pain, mental pain, and despair. He is one who is yoked to suffering, I say. Right? So this kind of attitude will keep on making us suffering, because we're shot by one arrow, then we start cursing and getting angry and upset, and then you shoot yourself the second arrow. The second arrow, actually, you're the one who shoot it at yourself, right? All right, now the positive part, the wise person. Here we say awaken, we say the arhat, but you can just say the wise noble disciple also can. So 9, because when the wise noble disciple is being touched by a painful feeling, he does not grieve, or he does not sorrow or grieve or lament or beat his breast or become confused. Hence, he feels only one feeling, the bodily, not the mental. Right? So just like Nakula Pitana, the body is old, but he's happy. He doesn't bother about it. 10. Bhikshus, it is just as if they were to wound a person with a dart, but they were not to wound him with a second dart. As such bhikshus, that person would feel the sensation of only one dart. Even so, bhikshus, when the wise noble disciple is being touched by a painful feeling, he neither sorrows, nor grieves, nor laments, nor beats his breast, nor becomes confused. Hence, he feels only one feeling, the bodily, not the mental. Right? So you notice even the Buddha, he has a headache, he has backache, and so he rests, he doesn't feel upset about it. 10.2. On being touched by that painful feeling, he shows no aversion towards it. He shows no aversion towards the painful. When he shows no aversion towards the painful feeling, the latent tendency of aversion towards painful feeling does not lie latent in him. It does not arise in others. Of course, one thing you can do to help you with this is to show loving kindness, right? So that helps you not to get upset. Right? So that's a practice you can add on. Then 10.3, on being touched by a pleasurable feeling. Okay, now it's the opposite. On being touched by a pleasurable feeling, he delights not in sensual pleasure. Why is that so? Because, bhikshus, the wise noble disciple knows escape other than through sensual pleasure. When he does not seek delight in sensual pleasure, the latent tendency of lust towards pleasant feeling does not lie latent in him. He understands, according to reality, the arising, the passing away, the gratification, the danger, and the escape from with regards to feelings. This last line refers to the Four Noble Truths, actually. Right? If you like, a bit more elaborate. So here, the wise noble disciple knows escape other than through sensual pleasure. What does this mean? He knows meditation. He has felt the joy and peace of meditation, especially jhana. So because he knows there is this deep inner peace, he says it's not worth it. Getting angry is not helpful. No use. It only will harm you. He understands that. That is understanding the last line. He knows the danger of that kind of feeling, negative feeling. Right? So you can see here a very important advice the Buddha has given us. How to feel the peace of your meditation, the joy of the meditation, to see the good things in your life, the happy things in your life. Smile at it. And then the dark side, that anger, hatred will not trouble you. That's another way of putting it. All right, further down, a little bit more. Okay, now we're nearing the end already, 10.6. understanding according to reality, the arising, the passing away, the gratification, the danger, and the escape with regards to feelings. The latent tendency of ignorance towards neutral feeling does not lie latent in him, right? So notice here he understands even this neutral feeling will pass away, will go away, it will change. So there is this latent tendency, ignorance does not trouble him. 10.7. If he feels a pleasant feeling, he feels unyoked to it. He feels happy, good, yeah, and it comes, it goes. But if he feels a painful feeling, he feels unyoked to it. He feels the pain, it comes, it goes. If he feels a neutral feeling, he feels unyoked to it. It comes, it goes. Right? This picture is called a wise, noble disciple who is not yoked to birth or death or sorrow or lamentation or physical pain or mental pain or despair. He's one who is not yoked to suffering, I say. Right? So this person, in other words, is happy. Right? So there you are. The Buddha has spoken about two kinds of people. Which shows this then is the distinction, the disparity, the difference between the wise noble disciple and the untutored, ordinary person. So the worldly person is caught up with two feelings because they have a negative emotion, but they get even more upset with it. In the case of the wise person, the practitioner, the person knows sadness to be so, happiness to be so, neutral feeling to be so, and he knows all this will pass away. And he lives in the present. Now the Buddha closes with the verses. Let's look at the verses, how the Buddha summarizes the teachings following the verses. Section 12, verse 12. The wise, deeply learned, feels not a feeling in his mind that is pleasant or painful. This is the great difference in skillfulness between the wise and the untutored, ordinary person. For the deeply wise who has mastered the Dhamma, who truly sees this world and the next, desirable things do not agitate his mind, nor does the undesirable thing bring him aversion. Okay, so I'll explain once I finish reading. For him, there is neither attraction nor repulsion, no rejection, if you like, neither attraction nor rejection. They have been dispersed, come to an end, and having known that dustless, sorrowless state, he rightly knows that he has crossed over existence. The last two lines refers to nirvana, dustless, sorrowless state. Dustless, there is no dust in the eye. So this arahat sees very clearly, non-blinking eye, so to speak. No sorrow, no suffering, is happy. And the crossover rebirth is happy, it's in nirvana. Correct? Now, in the first line says he feels not a feeling that is pleasurable or painful. Well, he does feel, but here feels not, meaning in the sense he does not feel like a foolish person. Okay, this is poem, so we have what's called poetic license. Yeah? So this wise person knows that all these three feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, are impermanent and they change. So I will end the sutta here. And before I go on to the next one, we'll see, are there any questions? Okay. Question time now. If there's no question, then I'll go on to the Salla Sutta.
I have a question.
Yes, please. Who is in charge of the questioning? Exim, right?
I think
Oh,
can
yeah.
just let her ask.
Sorry?
Can just let her ask the teacher.
Sorry, say that again.
Can just let her ask.
Okay, sure.
Take it right away. Yeah.
Okay, okay. Yes, Patricia?
Yeah. Okay.
Mm.
So the first arrow, it can also hit your mind. You know, it is not always bodily. The first arrow.
Very true, very true. Yes. Yeah, it can be body, speech, or mind. Yeah. So, yeah, that is a good observation. Usually, of course, it starts with the body. That's the most common one. But sometimes a negative thought can come, and we can apply the same principle. Yeah. Very good thought. Yes. Okay. Is that all?
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm thinking
Mhm.
that sometimes when the first arrow is in the mind, it can be in relation to other people.
Mhm.
Like you expect something of them.
Yes.
It's not, you don't get what you want.
Correct.
Then I think you have to protect yourself also. Like
Mhm.
because I'm an ordinary person,
Yes.
so I am not able to
Mhm.
to prevent the second error.
Okay.
Error.
So what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
Yeah, then I'm thinking, what should I do? Should I
Okay. So
try
all right. So that's your
always to be the kind person, or should I
all right.
first think of myself, accepting I'm not able to prevent the second arrow?
Mhm.
Should I distance myself more because I
Okay.
cannot change the other person?
Okay. So that's your question, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. This is a very useful question. A lot of people think that way, and the answer is already there. By distancing yourself, that's one way to be safe, right? So it is not just with COVID, it is in our daily life. When the situation is difficult, one way is to distance yourself so that you can think better, feel better. And you're not over-influenced by that negative situation. Sometimes we are so caught up with the negative situation, we make the wrong decisions, and that's not very wise. So you need to get away a bit. There must be some space. So this space can be your own peacefulness, or it can be actual space. You actually need to go away a bit, think for yourself, spend quiet moment. You find that people go away, sometimes even traveling, if the situation is really bad, they travel and then they experience things, then they say, oh, they have a better idea what to do when they come back. So some problems are not so easily solved, and this is how we solve it, by letting go of the problem and then looking at it in context, the bigger picture, we say. So that's one way of putting it, right? And another way is, of course, we tell ourselves, all right, so what is this situation really? Very often you have a voice in your head from the past, chatting, gossiping, bickering, telling you all the nasty things about this situation or this person, and then that makes things worse. So what we should do is, what exactly is the situation here? What exactly is the problem here? All right. All right. So I used to joke with Ratna, for example. I say, okay, look, it's so difficult for us to do this translation, and we have to translate, and then we have to proofread, and then we have to update it, and then put it online. So much work. Why can't we get more people to help us, And maybe any people find mistakes with us and so on. So maybe we are not educated enough. Maybe, we're so stupid. Let's give up, Let other people do it, So, but then I tell myself, okay, what really is the problem here? See, don't make it bigger than it is. It just happened that we have this issue, this particular sutta is difficult to understand, and that's the real situation, is it? So we get down to basics. We get down to the real situation. Don't make it bigger than it is, then you'll find you're dealing with a phantom. It's not the real problem. It's because you're not happy. Remember the sutta says you're not happy. There's this sadness that you have not dealt with, right? But there is this joy. The joy reminds you, say, hey, you are happy when you do this translation work, when you look at the suttas. And we know that. So make sure you do not overblow the problem. This is the first noble truth. Define it, what exactly it is. Do not make it bigger than it is, and deal with that. So, and it's very important in family situations, right? What is the problem now? Let's deal with it. Don't make it bigger than it is. Okay?
Yeah,
Okay, very good.
thank you.
Sure. Okay, any more questions? I think Exim can help to just moderate, encourage people to talk. Exim.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Piya, for the Sutta teaching. At the moment, there's no question in the chat box,
Okay.
Brother Piya. Brothers and sisters, if you have any questions, you can raise your hand and you can unmute yourself and ask your questions. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no question, I'm going to read a couple of verses from the Salla Sutta, because these verses are quite easy to understand. This is from the Sutta Nipata, one of the most ancient sections of the Pali Tipitaka. All right, so yeah, that's right. So I'm just going to read maybe a couple of verses. The Salla Sutta, Discourse on the Dhat, Sutta Nipata, chapter 3, Sutta 8. And this many of these Sutta Nipata, they're in verses, so these are Sutta number. So we normally will say SN 574, Sutta Nipata verse 574. And here you are, okay? Without a sign, with no knowing, is the life of mortals here. Difficult and brief it is, and ever joined with suffering. For there is no means by which those who are born do not die. Having reached old age, there's death too. Such is the nature of living beings. Okay, so what is the story behind these verses? The commentary tells us that one day a certain supporter of the Buddha is lost as a family member, probably a son, I think. So it's very sad, very unhappy. So the Buddha went to see him and gave him this teaching to comfort him. Okay? Two more verses and then see if there are any questions. Just as for fruits when ripened are always in danger of falling. Yep. Let me just correct that. One hand. Always in danger of falling. Even so, for mortals who are born, there is always the fear of death. Just as vessels of clay made by a potter all break up in the end, so is the life of mortals. Okay, any questions? Anyone questions come to mind?
Finish of the verses, please.
Sorry?
Finish of the verses. They're so interesting.
Okay, sure. All right. Further down, please. Young and old, both the foolish and the wise, all fall into the power of death. All have death as their goal. When they are overcome by death, going from here to the next world, no father protects his son, nor can relative protect relatives. Even now, here the Buddha mentions father only because he's talking to a man. You see? So remember, we're not talking about any sexist thing here. The Buddha is addressing the father. All right. So here the Buddha is reminding the father, you can't protect your son. When his time is due, he goes, right? So you are not to be blamed. Even as relatives look on, weeping and wailing away, see how one by one mortals are led away, like a cow to the slaughter. This is very common in India. No? The cows, they can't do anything, so they're led to the slaughter. Thus, in this world, smitten. Well, let me just 581. Okay. 581. Okay. Thus is this world smitten with death, by death and by decay. Therefore, the wise sorrow not, knowing the way of the world. Notice, knowing the way of the world. That's the way of the world. Whose path you do not know, whether come or gone. Seeing not either end, you lament uselessly. We don't know where the person who is born, where it comes from. We don't know where this person who dies goes away. So no point feeling sad and crying. Of course, you feel sad, but you don't have to suffer for it. If lamenting, the confused person harming himself could gain any benefit, the wise too would do the same. For neither by weeping nor by grief that one gains peace of mind. One's misery grows all the more. One's body is harmed too. I notice the Buddha is giving quite simple advice to this old man. He says, don't hurt yourself, right? You're not going to help yourself if you mourn in such a terrible way. One becomes thin, one loses color, harming oneself by oneself. Nor do the departed farewell by that. Lamentation is useless, right? So even if you mourn and cry, this person has passed away, already moved on, already reborn. Not abandoning grief, one falls deeper into sorrow. Bewailing the one who has died, one goes under sorrow's power. Further down. Look at others too, going on their way. People who fare according to their karma. Living beings trembling right here, having fallen under the powers of death. For in whatever way they think, it turns out to be other than that. Such is separation. See the way of the world. We can translate this separation as loss also, right? Here, vina bhavo, okay? Such is the nature of loss. Also can. That's loss of someone dear to us. Even if a man or a human were to live 100 years or even more, there's a separation from kith and kin. One gives up life here. Therefore, having heard the Arahat, of course the Buddha, one should give up lamentation. Seeing one departed done his time, one reflects, it's impossible to see him alive. Just as one would put out with water a fire burning a shelter, even so a steady, learned, wise, and skilled person would quickly remove grief, just as the wind blows away a piece of cotton. Lamentation and yearnings and one's own sorrow, one seeks happiness for oneself. Let one then draw out one's dart. Okay, so this is the key line. Draw out your dart. So here, this old man has got two darts, isn't it? So the Buddha is telling him, pull out the other arrow. With the arrow drawn out, independent, having gained peace of mind, gone beyond all grief, sorrow-free, one is quenched. So pull out the other arrow. So this man listens to the Buddha. Of course, the Buddha's voice is very soothed, and he's very happy. So that is the Salla Sutta. So you can see the old teachings are full of poems, and the teachings are very direct. You can just reflect on them and you feel happy. So this is an example of the Sutta Nipata. Okay, well, 10 minutes.
Piya, there's a question from Brother LC.
Yeah, go ahead.
As I learned from this sutta, is that we should not deal with queries on the sources of problem or subject, but we should be more concerned with the pressing conditions than concerned with matters that does not help the current conditions. But after we have resolved the current conditions, can we then be concerned with the reasons on the source of the problem arising so that we can prevent the recurrence of the problem?
Of course, you go step by step, right? First of all, you have to calm your mind, right? It's the Four Noble Truth approach. You got to know what is really going on, right? So for that, you got to have a safe distance and then find out what's going on. That's the idea. And once you pull out the second arrow, then the first arrow won't trouble you. The pain also is impermanent. Then you have the wisdom to sort things out. Then you are more ready to deal with the real situation. You begin to see the rise and fall of all things, whether they are pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And once you notice the rise and fall of things, then you know what to do next, basically. Okay, very good. Any more questions?
Yeah, thank you, Brother Piya. No question at the moment.
So read this poem by yourself. There's some minor typos, so just correct them. Of course, you can wait for you can write to us for the updated one we'll send to you. That's why we need proofreaders, no? Because sometimes we work very fast and we miss. These are human errors, nothing to do with the suttas. It's not the suttas error. There are some interesting footnotes here you should read for yourself. Like not footnote 2, especially footnote 2. Any other questions?
Yes, I have another question.
Yes, go ahead.
So, an arahant, he can only feel the first arrow in his body, right? Not in his mind.
The arrow of the mind, is it?
Yeah, so we, ordinary person, the first arrow you can feel it in the body, but also in the mind.
Yes, possible, yes. It can be any one of the 3 doors. The 3 doors of karma, remember? Body, speech, mind. It can
Yeah, I don't understand how I can feel the first arrow in speech.
Someone says something, and then you listen to it, you get upset, you see?
Yeah, but then it's my mind that is upset.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good observation. So in the end, it's the mind that decides. So, but the sources are 3. Something you do,
Yeah.
like falling down, and then you think about it. Something you hear, and then you think about it. A thought comes to your mind, and then you think about it. Then yeah, so the mind is always there.
But like an arahant, he can only feel the first arrow. It will always only be in his body, right? Not in his speech or in his mind.
Technically, I suppose, yeah, that is why the Buddha mentions the body. Someone gets hurt to the body, they get hurt physically. But when you talk physically in the suttas, physical includes speech also. You know, for example, when we talk about the precepts, is body and speech, the 5 precepts, the first 4 precepts. So speech is part, in a sense, is part of a bodily action. But in terms of karma, they are mentioned separately. But I think in terms of personal training, we should, if you are wise enough, you can extend it to the mind also when thought arises. But the more common way is usually the other 2 doors of karma, the body and speech. That's more common. Okay?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Very good.
Brother Piya, there's another question from
Mm.
Brother LC.
All right.
Why not the Buddha spare some time to answer the origin of life, which is the pressing question of most people?
That's why they're suffering. Right? I mean, it's not a pressing. It used to be, I used to ask questions, yeah, but then you find there's so many answers. So the Buddha says, well, you can try and get all the answers, but you'll never be satisfied with the answers because there's no answer. Simple as that, Even the scientists, imagine the best minds cannot agree on the same answer, you see. So you can understand why the Buddha is not keen on, wasting time over this, right? I would say this has a lot to do with our own nature, but some of us are by nature, we're just speculative. And we end up asking a lot of questions, but end up never practicing, actually. We're more curious about the question than the answer. So that may not be helpful. That will waste our time also. And it's one of those things I always watch in a student. If the student is just like to play a dog biting his own tail, you see this dog running around biting his own tail. Even my cat does that. It's very funny. But then, you have this snake, this Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail. There's this story, this mythology, this huge, big cosmic snake. It's so big, it doesn't know that it sees another tail, so it thinks it's another snake. So it bites that tail, it wants to eat it. And the more it bites the tail, the more painful it is, and it thinks that there is another snake trying to hurt it. So it bites even more, and it hurts itself even more. So in order to stop, you stop biting. Right? When you stop biting, then you find that's it. You don't feel any pain, right? So we cause our own pain by wanting to know things which are not helpful, of which there are no answers, and when the real things in life are unanswered. So you got to find out what are the real things in life that need to be dealt with. There is this arrow with which we are shot. We got to pull this out. There is this person who is sick we have to deal with. Right? And sometimes we ask so many questions, and this poor person was already dead by then. Right? So this is what the Buddha says: deal with the problem, real problem first. Don't get caught up with all this luxury of question and answer of which we don't know. See? Sometimes I call this leisure Buddhists. Leisure Buddhists, they like to, they have a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of time. And so they just sit down over coffee and start chatting and debating. And then they feel very important about it. And you find in the end, there's nothing really, just a lot of hot air, a lot of unhappiness even. So it's better to deal with the real things. Or you see someone suffering, how can we help this person? We see someone in pain, how can we lessen this person's pain? We see someone who's poor, how can we help this person in a helpful way, in a wise way? So that's more useful, right? So don't get caught up with all this speculative, unless you have some kind of useful answer like the scholars, right? But even though if you're a scholar, there are always limits to even the best thoughts that we have. And scholars need to be paid, is it? So all these ideas that they present must be publishable, readable, teachable, and so on. So there are lots of issues involved with all these speculative things. All right. So what is really helpful in life? Ask yourself. That's the question you should ask. All right. Any other question? Oh, it's already time's up. All right, 10 o'clock. Eh?
Yeah, no more question.
All right, Ratna,
Yes.
family photo time. So I'm happy some of you already ready. That's good. Yeah. Yes, let's get a family photo. So give you a weekend smile. Sutta smile. All right.
Okay. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Smile. Very good. Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay. Right. So no last minute urgent question, huh? Okay, so here we are. Let's close this study with a short reflection. Once again, this is our holy day, right? Every other Friday is our holy day. This for 2 hours, we gather together, we keep the precepts, we do some meditation, we study the suttas, we look at ourselves. Right? We're studying ourselves right now, right? So this is that special day when you spend with yourself, for yourself. And remember the joy, peace, the challenges that you face now to know yourself better. And these are things you don't easily get. Not any teacher or any friend will tell you. We need honesty, courage, and some wisdom to do these things. So remember this as if you are the one admonishing yourself, you are the one teaching yourself. In this wonderful moment of joy and peace, send your kind thoughts to your loved ones. Of course, send it to yourself first. May each of you be well and happy so that you can continue to learn the Dhamma and do whatever is important to you in life. Send your kind thoughts to other loved ones, your teachers, friends. May they, wherever they are, may they be well and happy. And now we bow down 3 times to the Buddha, the teaching that brings us happiness and joy and wisdom, and the inspiration of those who have followed his teaching and gained the path. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivadimi. Bow down. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Bow down. Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami. Bow down. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.